Ladies and gentlemen, the constant battle continues. People are still looking for loud mixes, loud masters, and I told you, the only way to achieve that is through greater RMS value. So you have to balance the RMS and the peak values. If you can retain the same peak value, but to make the RMS level greater, you'll be able to achieve a lot louder mixes and masters. Now another question for you. Did you ever use Golfas plugin? If you do, you know about Soundtheory. Now, if you know about Soundtheory, they just released another plugin. So they released their second plugin called Kraftur. We're going to review this plugin in this video. And how does it correlate to RMS and LUFS and overall peak value? Because Kraftur is a multi-band saturator and a clipper. Let's dive into how this plugin operates, and I'll show you why is it actually very beneficial for your mixes and masters. If you're a real engineer or if you're a complete beginner, you'll definitely appreciate what this plugin offers, because something like this does not exist anywhere else except on Soundtheory. As always, I have to be very honest about this plugin. So I personally had a lot of fun testing it out, playing with different sounds, so basically checking out what this Kraftur can actually do to my sound. Now let's explain what Kraftur actually is. Once you open the plugin, the first thing you'll see is this big red triangle right here, and it represents something unique that I don't really see on many multi-band plugins such as this one, and this is again a multi-band saturator. You can fine-tune and basically blend between the dry, single band and multi-band saturation, as you can see here. Why is this very useful? For example, if you always struggle with basically saturating the signal and your low end starts distorting and something like that happens, some artifacts that you don't really want on your signal, this is another great way. However, this is linked to some other features. So let's go through each of them and I'll explain how each one can benefit you. Now below this red triangle we have this drive slider, which is pretty straightforward. You can basically bring as much drive as you want into the plugin itself, so it basically starts saturating your signal. Now we have offset and knee. Now don't mistake when using this. Offset and knee control the steepness of the curve that's actually going to affect how much saturation, how the overall saturation sounds on your signal. So the offset will control the lower part of the curve, as you can see on the screen, and this knee will control the top part of the curve. Now why is this useful and why I personally like this? Now I have a lot of flexibility when I'm adjusting the knee and how my saturation is going to sound. So that's why they split the overall knee into two sections, the offset and the knee, which just sounds amazing. Below these knee settings we have the low, mid and high shifts. What each of them do? These are basically your thresholds for each frequency band. So for the low end, for the mid range and for the high end, you can basically adjust how much of a saturation are you going to introduce to a specific frequency band. Moving on to the right side, you have the output meter and you have, as you can see, this clip button right here. Kraftur is originally a multi-band saturator and a clipper, all in one. Once you disengage this plugin, you can just use this output meter as your output knob on other plugins. Now if you engage, you can also gain match, but everything that goes below that specific value that you set is going to be clipped, which also gives that nice warmth effect and that like punch that you, for example, want on drums. Another amazing thing to keep in mind is that you have some values for the lows, for the mids, for the highs. As soon as you click on the highs, you can isolate the high range and listen to it specifically. The same goes for the mids or for the lows. These are your crossover points that you have on your speakers, on multi-systems, and they won't really affect as much phase as you think they have. So you won't have any phase issues. However, you can also readjust them. I'll keep the default ones for this signal. Understanding the visuals on Kraftur is highly important because they can just give you the perfect amount of saturation that you want, especially the meters you see on the bottom, on the right side and in the middle. Each of the color is related to the band you select. So for example, in this multi-band mode, it will be like this. For example, if you select the single mode, you now can see only one band right here. I would highly suggest using this in your projects, because this is how you can avoid distorting your low end and just oversaturating your sound. For example, this is how it will signal that you basically went very hard with the saturation. For example, if I push this low band a bit more, look at this meter right here. It's basically indicating that the low end is now distorting. So you can back it down and yeah, you just make sure you're working with a clean signal. Another thing I wanted to mention is this CFR meter right here, which stands for Crest Factor Reduction. It's basically a gain reduction meter and it's linked to these numbers right here. So that's how you can operate. Finally, to make sure we cover all the details, we have the bypass button right here and we have the match. So this will basically match the loudness of your signal. And personally, I prefer keeping this off and then using my output meter just to make sure I'm working with the same peak level. So the audio examples you'll be hearing in this walkthrough are all the same peak level. So the only difference is the RMS level, which is what we want. Now, how do I visualize using Kraftur? I would definitely stay with the multiband mode, but still keeping some of that dry signaling just to make sure we have those dry transients punching in. Next, I would start with bringing in the drive so I get some saturation, and then I'll notice what's distorting, what not. Next thing, I would make sure I don't distort my low end, so I would probably go with lower value right here just to move the threshold around and then push the mids and highs depending on the signal. After all of that, I'm going to set the knee and again blend the thresholds to my taste. So Kraftur is a very creative tool and you have to manipulate the settings over and over again. It's very original and unique. Now let's listen to how Kraftur sounds on drums when being pushed a bit harder, and then in mashing, since Kraftur can also be used for mashing purposes. Before we move on to how Kraftur sounds in mashing, I want to mention one very important thing that people usually get wrong. When setting Kraftur to 100% dry like this won't be exactly the same as bypassing the plugin. Now let's hear how Kraftur sounds in mashing.
Hey, I thought I was down to nothing, God was up to something. Thank you, Jesus, sorry, Satan, I know that's a touchy subject. Freely I receive, freely I give, I do not got a budget. I've been frank with Satan like the president, I'm on 100. I just kicked another demon like it's kung fu. Jesus is the one I run to, Satan's who I run through. Never would've had to come up if my God ain't come through.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and now you'll probably understand why Kraftur is a very useful plugin. Me, as a mashing engineer, I highly appreciate the value this plugin offers because there's no such a tool. I have analog gear, I have all the things I need for mashing. This cannot be compared because this offers a complete new dimension when working in music. More videos are coming soon, so if you have some ideas, feel free to drop them down in the comments or just mail me.